Let's look at the running back position. This is a fast one. What is up, Finn fans? Yes, we are breaking down the camp battle position for running back. And it's going to be an interesting one. There's a lot of names that I really like on this list. So we're going to talk about that and break that down. Before we jump into that, I got to talk about two things. First, shout out a new member in Pokemon 1985. That's the year my sister was born. 2 years before I was born. Thank you for joining the membership. If you'd like to join the membership, it is linked below. So, real quick, this pertains to the patrons and possibly the members. I had to take headshots for my real estate, and I did it myself because I have the equipment and everything. So, my sister's also into photography and all that stuff. So, we did it ourselves, and we took some really stupid pictures. And I'm debating whether to put them on the Patreon and the membership. I think I'm going to put them on the Patreon so you guys can look at them and laugh and look how ridiculous I am. But I'm debating if I'm going to put them on both the Patreon and the membership. I haven't decided yet. But thank you so much for joining the membership. And these are the special perks you get as being a member and a patron. You get things that not everyone's going to say. So I just want to thank you for that and make that little announcement. Also, I think it was 5 days ago, broke 10 million views on the channel. 10 million views. That means 10 million people have watched my videos. That is ridiculous. So it's just a huge milestone hitting, and I want to thank you guys so much for that. Like I said, this is the dead part of the year, and I'm still pumping out content. Still got a ton of videos and all that stuff playing for you guys. So, you know, that's my thank you to you guys, and your thank you to me is watching and giving thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. So I appreciate it very, very much. Now let's get into what this video is all about. We're going to be talking about the running backs of the Miami Dolphins. Now, like I said, the Miami Dolphins have 7 running backs right now on the roster in Savannah Ahmed, Doakes, Chase Edmonds, Myles Gaskin, Sony Michelle, Raheem Moser, and Sequandry White. Not as many as I think they've had in the past. I think in the past they've had a pretty penny of running backs. But when I'm looking at these running backs, I see a ton of quality in these running backs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through them, give you little stats here and there, give you a little idea of what they've done so far, and tell you who I think possibly has a chance to make the roster and who might be having that fight to make the team. And again, that's where the battle comes in. This is the first position where there's actually a battle to have been. So now we're going to start with Savannah Ahmed last year. Well, first off, Savannah Ahmed, I tried to look up everyone's 40 time because we got some fast running backs. Some of the guys ran like a 4.5, 4.6. But some of these guys, like Savannah Ahmed, I don't know if you guys know this, but he didn't run at the combine, right? He wasn't at the NFL combine. He was at the Husky combine, and he ran a 4.32. I didn't realize how fast Savannah Ahmed was. That man is fast. But last year, he only had 54 carries for 149 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2.8 yards per attempt. He didn't get many touches last year. I think he was underutilized, if you want my God's honest answer on that one. Just to give you a little retrospective when I talk about attempts and carries and stuff like that. The league leading rusher was obviously Taylor, right? He had 332 carries. I'm going to reiterate these things just to kind of bring some, drive a point home. Behind him was Nick Chubb with 228 carries, and behind him was Mixon with 292 carries. So those are your top 3 yards leading rushers. And they had, again, 332 was Taylor, 228 was Chubb, and a Mixon was 292. Keep that in mind. I'll bring it back up. Just keep that in mind. So that's Savannah Ahmed. Doakes, 7th round pick for us last year. Never really got to see the field. I don't understand why I didn't get to see the field. We did bring in Philip Lindsay, and we brought in Duke Johnson, but I don't understand why they never really gave Doakes the opportunity to hit the field and really show what he can do. So there's not many stats to go off on him. But he is that big bullish type back, and I would have liked to see what he could do on the field. Hopefully we get to see that in the preseason a little bit more, and in training camp. Then you have Chase Edmonds, and a guy we brought in this offseason. He ran a 4.55. Again, not as fast as Savannah Ahmed with a 4.32. 116 carries for 592 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he averaged 5.1 yards per attempt. And this is where I'm going to, again, reiterate the carries, right? He had, I'm going to pull out my calculator. I'm going to do some math here, right? He had 116 carries, right? 116 carries. And if we look at the leading rusher in Taylor, who had 332 carries, if you minus those, that's a difference of 216 carries. You take that 216, people are like, Doug, I didn't come and watch your channel for math. Stick with me. You take that 216, you times it by 5.1, because that's how many yards he got per carry. That's 1,106 yards. So if he did get the same amount of carries as Taylor, and he continued with that 5.1 yards per carry, he would have had like a 1,600 yard season last year in Chase Edmonds. It's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. Now, obviously, he's not going to get 5.1 yards carry every carry, and he's not. But that, I'm just reiterating that. Look at the amount of carries he got compared to the top rushers. Because even if you double his carries, because Chubb had 228 carries, he's still a 1,000-yard rusher. You know, he's very limited in the amount of carries he got. I'll get to talking about that. Then you have Myles Gaskin with the Dolphins last year. He had 173 carries for 612 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3.5 yards per attempt. That's not good, that 3.5 yards per attempt. He wasn't very good at, breaking the tackles. And my biggest thing with Myles Gaskin was he danced too much. He'd always try to, dance somebody out of their shoes and try to hit a home run instead of just finding the gap, seeing the lane, planting his foot and going. That was always my problem with Myles Gaskin. But again, another situation, 173 carries. You look at, and I'll go with Nick Chubb, who was, top 3 in rushing yards, 228 carries. And he was almost at 1,000, 612 rushing yards behind a very bad offensive line. Then you have Sony Michelle. Sony Michelle with the Rams last year, 208 carries for 845 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4.1 yards per attempt. I think if he was that leading running back for the Rams, I think he would have broke 1,000 yards. And if you also looked at his time with New England, his first year there, he only had 209 carries, but had 931 yards, 6 touchdowns. Second year, only 247 carries, 912 yards. And then his last year there, only 79 carries, 449 rushing yards. That was his best year average, 5.7 yards per attempt. The Sony Michelle signing was probably an underrated signing. I think he's going to be a very good running back in this system, and I like that he has consistently been productive in all of the situations he's been put in. That is my biggest thing that I like about Sony Michelle, is his production has always been at a certain level. 931 yards, 912 yards, even when his 2020 year with the Patriots, who only started 6 games for 79 carries, but he still had 449 yards. This past year, like I said, 208 carries, only started 7 games, 845 yards. Very, very productive running back. Then we have Raheem Moser, injured last year, so there's not many stats on him last year. But he ran a 4.32 as well. Again, speed. These running backs are fast. So I looked at his 2020 stats. He had 104 carries for not cutting that out, 521 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 yards a carry. Again, you double that, he is a 1,000-yard rusher in 2020. 2019, he had 137 carries for 772 yards, 8 touchdowns, 5.6 yards in a carry. So Raheem Moser, If he can get back to that form, that 2019 form, you know, he had that injury last year, he's going to be real dangerous. And then we have Sequandry White, who we undrafted, hearing very, very, very good things about him in OTAs and all that stuff. We'll see how he does. He's kind of like Jared Doakes, where we'll see if he gets to see the field and all that stuff. But looking at this roster, now we'll talk about the battles, right? I think this is going to be another by committee, right? You kind of saw that with the 49ers. Look at Raheem Moser's stats and stuff. I think your top three running backs, in my opinion, I think your top three running backs are Chase Edmonds, Sony Michelle, and Raheem Moser. I think those are your top three running backs, let alone, right? Last year, there was only 7 running backs last year that averaged 5 yards an attempt or higher. 7 running backs. And if you look at Chase Edmonds, he had 5.1. And for Raheem Moser in 2020 and 2019, 5 and 5.6 yards per attempt. So those are my top 2 guys with Sony Michelle. Those are my top 3 running backs that I don't think you really have to worry that, or they really don't have to worry about being cut. I think those are great additions. The battle comes in with Savannah Ahmed, Jared Doakes, Myles Gaskin, and Sequandry White. Those 4 guys are going to be competing to make the roster. And that is where it's going to get interesting, right? Garrett Doakes was not drafted by Mike McDaniel. He's not, he's there, obviously. They're going to see what he can do. They're going to, use him and all that stuff. But he is not a Mike McDaniel guy. He did not get brought in by Mike McDaniel. Same thing with Savannah Ahmed. Same thing with Myles Gaskin. So those 3 guys could be potential, odd men out, whereas Sequandry White, Raheem Moser, and obviously Sony Michelle and Chase Edmonds, those are guys that Mike McDaniel brought in. So if I'm picking, and again, I'm going to do a whole video where I, predict the depth chart. Again, I told you my 3. They might carry 4. I think Sequandry White, worst case scenario, goes to the practice squad. I think that is absolute worst case scenario. Same thing with Jared Doakes. So it seems like it's between Myles Gaskin and Savannah Ahmed. And I'd have to go with Myles Gaskin. I like Savannah Ahmed's speed, because again, he ran 4.32 at that Husky Combine. But I like the production out of Myles Gaskin. So if I'm a betting man and if I have to make a prediction, which again, I'll be more in depth with the video when I predict the depth chart in the preseason, it's going to be Chase Edmonds, Myles Gaskin, Sony Michelle, Raheem Moser are going to be your running backs going into the season, those 4. And then I think they take Sequandry White and possibly Garrett Doakes, maybe even Savannah Ahmed, and put them on the practice squad. But comment below. Let me know what you think. Who do you think is going to, do you agree with me with the starting 3? Who do you think is going to be the starting running back? I wouldn't be surprised if it was Sony Michelle. I really do like his production. Who do you think is the odd man out? Who do you don't think is going to make the roster? Be sure to comment below. That's what I got for you today. Next video, I think I'm going to bust out a top 10. Which top 10? I don't know. But I think I'm going to bust out a top 10 video. It would be fun. Maybe top 10 favorite plays from last year. I got a lot. That's going to be a hard one. But I'll see you guys in the next one. But like usual, stay classy and fins up.